Yes, good morning. You're watching Daybreak right here on Citizen TV. It's that time when we take a look at the issues behind the headlines. This morning, we're privileged to have on my right Gladys Wanga, woman representative, Homa Bay County. Good morning, Karibu.
Morning,
and Kipruto Rapkirwa, deputy party leader, ANC.
Good morning.
We are still hoping that one more person will be joining us, but we'll introduce her once she gets to studio. Big headlines today, this morning. A quick look at the dailies. Teachers split over Sosyon strike plan. Kupet dismisses call for September industrial action as unnecessary and likely to interfere with learning. Instead launches negotiations with TSC to resolve dispute over performance appraisal and mass transfers. That's a big one on the front page of the Daily Nation. Another interesting headline on the front page of the Daily Nation: why that fish dish could be poisonous. And the story starts with a question: is the fish Kenyans are consuming from China safe? I guess it has to do with the fish imports from China. On the front page of the Standard, Uhuru lifestyle audit process now gets hotter. All civil servants have been asked to declare their wealth afresh and to sign new forms. MPs tighten news on Rotich and Aidan. Those are CSs. This is one headline that we'll definitely look at. And there's that photo on the front page of the Daily Nation where apartments in Kileleshwa are still being brought down by NEMA. And these are apartments that are very close to Nairobi River in attempts to reclaim the riparian reserve. But as we had said earlier, today is August the 8th. It is exactly 1 year since the elections last year. And despite the fact that there was a repeat election for the president on October 26th, most of the elected leaders were elected on August the 8th. And we're talking about governors, senators, women representatives, members of the National Assemblies, as the National Assembly, as well as the members of the county assemblies. And now today we ask the question: what changes have we seen? What benefits have we gained as a country? What have we done so far? Basically taking a scorecard of the year, 1 year down the line after the elections. Yes, and Honorable Gladys Wanga, where are we at? We seem to have gotten into this rut of discussing elections over and over. We're already talking about 2022. It's been 1 year. It's already lapsed. And people never thought that this could happen. It's already lapsed.
Yeah, I think time really does fly. And I think this 1 year has gone really fast. And the reason is the events, you know. Elections were on August 8th, and then we had a repeat elections which we did not participate in on October 26th, and then from there was, you know, push and pull. There's been a lot of political tensions, but I think the year really began on March 9th for me, if you know, so to speak. The year of work really began on March 9th, yes, after the handshake. Because before the handshake, everybody was pulling in their own different direction and nobody was really able to do anything. You remember that as NASA, we boycotted Parliament for as long as I can remember. I mean, it was almost 6 months we did not...
But would you say the National Assembly, for example, has finally settled down?
I think it is settling.
It is still settling. Yeah. It hasn't finally settled.
No, it is still settling. We are still settling. People are still fitting in, because the members of parliament who came in this 12th parliament, I think, have had a shorter time to settle, because before both sides of the house are seated, you really can't count yourself as settled, because for a long time we did not send any members to committees. We did not have anybody in the House Business Committee. So yes, the house was said to be running, but it wasn't really running. So what I'd like to say is the year began on March 9th.
Yes. And
from March 9th, we have seen progress. We have seen, you know, the country coming down, the economy beginning to, you know, come down, and then we have seen the fight against corruption. Then now the budget came, and you know, we are still looking at effect of this new budget and the Big Four agenda.
Bonakirwa, 1 year after the elections, what's your assessment of the country?
Well, I will just borrow from what you said, that the country settled or started settling from the 9th of March, because the rest of it was electioneering prior to election. Subsequently, after elections, there was a lot of electioneering and polarization of the country. I think it is after the 9th that people now started looking at each other differently. Otherwise, we had almost named each other as wanted individuals in our society. And it was a worrying trend, and I'm happy it did happen, that the two leaders decided that we've done enough of our fights, let us settle and deal with the issues of the country. The other issue is the question of revenue. I'm sure in the intervening period, no business was doing well, and therefore collection of revenue was very low. And that may explain some of the deficit that the government is faced with at this particular time. So apart from the deficit, there is also the question of anxiety and also investor confidence. It was waning, and we lost a lot of opportunities. I remember the issue subsequent, the issue of sugar, and the issue of our goods not being good for human consumption. We were losing 27 million shillings every hour for the last couple of months, and I hope the confidence is coming back.
Yes, but do you think that we've finally settled a year later? Because even Honorable Wanga said we are still, even Parliament is still settling. Have we finally settled to a point where we can actually say now we can actually talk about development, the development agenda?
We are settling, but the main unsettling effect is that people are looking beyond the present. They are looking at 2022. Others are worried that corruption will catch up with them because of the lifestyle audit. And others are almost thinking that why did we have to go to bed with these individuals? This is the main problem that I see ourselves not settling effectively. And I've said before, I would have expected President Uhuru Kenyatta and William Ruto to settle the main communities that were protagonists prior to 2013 election, after their case at The Hague was resolved. But that is still very unsettling. Where I come from, well, the two leaders may say they are together, but I don't think the people are together. This is something that informs my worry all the time, because I strongly believe that this country ought to be one.
Okay. And back to the electioneering cycle, because this will happen again and again. We seem to have gotten into this rut where a year before the elections we are busy campaigning. Then a year after the election, and we've seen this this time around, it takes more than a year to settle down. In a 5-year term, it only leaves less than 3 years for any meaningful work to be done. In our situation right now, where politicians are already talking much more about 2022 and not even what can be done right now, a year has already gone by. Does that worry you?
Yeah, I think it's a worrying trend, because it's not just a year before election. You realize that 2 years before election, people get into electioneering mode. So when we're talking about the 2017 elections, by 2015, late 2015, 2016, people are already in full electioneering mode, and that takes away 2 years of the working cycle. So your hope is the first 3 years is when work should be done. But this is even more unsettling because we are in a succession year. Because, you know, right now, in the last term, there was an incumbency, you know, so as the minority we were organizing ourselves and you know, putting the government on its toes, but the government, you know, within the government cycles there were not the kind of infighting we are seeing now, or the jostling for succession. But right now, the greatest undoing of this nation, and the reason that we can't really settle, is because everything is laced with 2022. Everybody, I mean, there is a section of politicians who have refused to just leave 2022 and focus on work. Even all this, you know, we see all these development trips, oh, we are going to a development trip here, there, and while the, you know, the main guy does not speak about, you know, much about 2022, but everybody before that speaks about 2022. So we cannot be convinced that these are development trips. These are campaign trips. There is no other name you can call them. So if we are campaigning with government resources from today, you tell me if you're going to deliver any work.
And President Uhuru Kenyatta may have thought that probably his second term was the best time for him to actually do a lot of development. But a year down the line, nothing seems to have really started. He's facing a lot of issues with regard to even getting cabinet secretaries to actually focus on his Big Four agenda. Don't you think that if you may assess the situation after 1 year after elections, that probably, and the kind of discussions we're having about 2022, that probably the president has lost an opportunity to actually do something tangible?
In fact, if I was to advise the president today, I'll just tell him, forget about the other four. Deal with the issue of corruption. Because once you resolve the issue of corruption, you will release almost 1 trillion Kenya shillings to the economy for purposes of us investing in projects. Because the main challenge about these items is the fact that next year, half of the revenue we are going to collect, we are going to pay the debt that you already have, and whatever remains, a third of it will be stolen. And if the trend continues of launching projects that may never take off in the next 5 years, because you cannot conceivably tell us that these projects will take off, and yet doctors are not being paid, nurses are not being paid, teachers are worried. The other day I went to Mala Girls High School to do a rambe, and I realized out of 25 teachers, 10 are employed by the Board of Management. What does it tell you? It tells you that the parents were told that there is free education through one door, and through the window, free education was taken away. So these are some of the realities that we should tell the president. Can you arrest the thieves? Take them to court. After convicting them, let them return what they stole from the coffers of the nation. That can be the agenda that the legacy that the president will leave us. Otherwise, all this is going to be hula baloo. People are already thinking about 2022, and they're engaging on that particular gear. They have defied him. The president said, don't launch new projects. Let us deal with already existing projects. His deputy is going all over town launching projects, some of them imaginary.
And on page 3 of the Standard, talking about new government projects, there's a rush to enforce a 3 billion shilling ID project, which is now raising eyebrows. And critics question why it is being fast-tracked and tendering single-sourced. And this is an integrated identification system for all Kenyans. Remember, there's already one by the NTSA for new driver's licenses. There's another one for new identity cards. And there's also a third one, and I'll get to that shortly. But this is a new project. We seem to be doing parallel projects at the same time. And with the kind of time we're looking at, do you think the president is going to achieve anything? I'm sure you have a lot of hope in the handshake that will really assist in the development agenda. But don't you think the president appears to have lost the best opportunity to actually action out anything?
I think one of the key things that the president did, which is laudable, is to stop the launching of new projects before old ones are completed. And what that means is, why are you launching a new road in the same constituency when the one that you launched has not been started? Actually, you realize that when I understand when the president went to Kwale, he discovered a road he launched last year had not even started. The way he launched, the contractor folded his things and moved out of sight, and probably somebody else was going to go and launch another road and a new one and a new one. And I think when the president said, hold on to new projects, let us pay for and finish the old projects, what he was dealing with was the fact that people sometimes like these new projects because you can negotiate, cut deals, you know, when the project is being started. After it has started, you leave it there, you go and start another one. So I think that was a very, very good instruction. And I think if the president sticks on to that, then he might have somewhere to go as far as the lake. But one thing he must do, and he has tried to do, but I think he has, you know, rogue people who are not listening, is to say, stop this campaign for 2022. Let us focus on work. I think he must put his foot down, because if we don't stop 2022 campaigns, then we are done. And as NASA and our own leader has said, you know, however much he has been pushed, because, you know, it's not like we don't know how to campaign. It's not like we cannot hold rallies and start saying so and so will be the president for 2022. We know how to do that, but we are not doing it. Why? Because we want the country to settle and we want our people to benefit from work. It's not just one group that knows how to say 2022. Everybody knows that. So the president must put his foot down as far as the 2022 campaigns are concerned. That must stop, and the issue of new projects must also stop until the old ones, within the same jurisdiction. I think what he meant is not just any new project. It is, if you are in the Ministry of Roads, for example, why are you starting a new road if an old road has not been completed? If you are in water, why are you starting a new water project while an old water project within the same area has not been completed?
For example, do you think that this is what is happening with this integrated identification system? Insiders are questioning the government's rush to implement the project. The project comes barely after the NTSA unveiled the new generation driving license, which will shift to a new ID system. The proposed setting up of the National Integrated Identity Management System, NIMS, will ensure that all IDs, refugee cards, birth and death certificates, as well as driving licenses and passports are printed and distributed from one point. But there's already other people working on similar things. NTSA is already working on a different system. The Immigration Department is already working on a new ID system, and then there's an integrated one which is going to cost us 3 billion shillings. Don't you think that that is definitely a route for wastage?
It runs in the same manner that you're saying, that if you have another project, you do not become oblivious of the ongoing project and you start launching another one. When the resources, we know the government does not have enough money. Even today, the budget runs in a deficit, and I don't see them raising enough revenue for purposes of even implementing the projects that have already been commissioned. It is actually the height of hypocrisy, and of course, it's the same gravy train, because some of the meetings that we know that used to take place for a roll call for people to come with money to certain offices, they have been stopped temporarily. So these new projects, as Mheshimiwa Wanga said, may be a new avenue for purposes of harvesting money where there is no work.
Yes.
But what is important is that Kenyans are not oblivious. I remember President Kibaki telling us that don't tell people what you are going to do in December. Tell them what you are doing now, because by December you might have forgotten, but they will still remember. By 2022, Kenyans will remember you launched this project, nothing has happened, because there is no enough money. The debt is growing by 15%, and the GDP growth is only 9%.
Yes.
And therefore the debt is catching up with the resources that we are raising as a nation.
What does it say about government coordination? Because all these things have to be budgeted for. If I told the NTSA, the Immigration Department, are already working on separate parallel ID systems, why would the government then come up, the ICT department come up with a new integrated system? Well, that is already going on and it's already costing us money.
It boils to the same thing, that people are looking where to have a deal to cut. It is not an issue of government working in sync. Otherwise, why should you duplicate an effort? Because I'm the same person. You want to identify me in the other department, and you want to identify me in a new department. What is the need for the two identification systems?
Yes. And all these revelations come within the same 1 year after elections, that different ministries are now seem to be working at cross purposes. One ministry working on an integrated system, separate ministries working on parallel systems, and cabinet ministers, cabinet secretaries disagreeing even in the National Assembly. Don't you think there's a problem with this cabinet, even as you talk about the probability of a cabinet reshuffle?
Yep, Fred, let me talk about this NIM system, because I've had a bit about it, and I think it sort of brings together everything else that has been going on, and it registers people from their homes at whatever stage, which I think is not a bad thing, because whether you're not waiting for your ID, you're not waiting for you're registered. Everybody in this country, all 45 million, 48 million of us, will be in this system, so that when I go to get my ID, nobody is asking me for anything else. When my time comes to get an ID, at 18 years, I have my ID. When the time comes for me to get a passport, nobody is asking me for anything else. So I think the NTSA, which I have a new generation driving license, and so what it does is, you can be identified anywhere and so on and so forth, and you have your biometrics on it and so on. But I think it is limited to just those who are driving and so on.
Would the integrated system serve all that?
Yes. So now I think the NTSA one will probably become, you know...
Yet it has cost taxpayers money to implement.
Irrelevant.
I'm sure they've spent quite some money, and they will continue doing so because they've not stopped doing it.
No, it's true.
Yes?
No, I just wanted to say that broadly looking at the NIMS, I think
Yes.
it's an idea whose time has come.
Yes.
But then I think how government manages its things in terms
Isn't it
of
lack
why
of
was
proper
NTSA...
coordination?
Yes, why was
because this
NTSA...
must have been in the pipeline.
Yes. Why was NTSA doing this when we knew we were coming up with the NIMS, you
Yes.
know, that incorporates everything? I think that is the question that needs to be
What about the
asked.
new generation ID cards? Because the education department is also working on that, the new generation ID cards, and it spent quite a lot of money on that as well. I'm sure this plan for an integrated system, the NIMS, has not just come up now.
No, I think it's something that must have been thought through, and therefore I think what this government must do is to coordinate better. You know, there was no need for NTSA to begin something when they knew the NIMS was coming.
And who is in charge of this government coordination? Because from even when you look at CSs appearing before Parliament and seeming to be at different frequencies when they discuss about government issues, including their own ministries. There seems to be a disconnect when it comes to coordination of government processes. Who is in charge of that?
Maybe Kiva, who's been in the cabinet.
Well, of course, the chief executive of the nation is the president himself. And it will take also other people to listen to him, because that's the person that Kenyans gave the mandate, despite the fact that some of us were doubting that mandate. But now, that's the reality today. Because
my understanding is that we have a Ministry of Interior and National Coordination. Does it have anything to do with that?
No, usually each minister is in charge of the portfolio under the Constitution. And therefore, you'd expect each minister to be answerable to the president. But remember, the tradition that was set by 2013 election was Uhuru Ruto. Therefore, we created two centers of power. And you know, those people who have dealt with issues of management, they understand that when there are two centers of power, it is invariably going to create confusion.
So the problem within Jubilee,
what the president should do is to rein in good manners and allow him to be the chief executive, because this is legacy about Uhuru Kenyatta, not about Uhuru Kenyatta and others. That is essentially what it is.
And all you're trying to do is just come up with a scorecard for the government and the elected leaders a year after the elections of August the 8th last year. A lot is happening: corruption, lack of coordination in government that is so glaring. We're seeing it in the headlines this morning. The fact that we're looking at big project for national integration identity system that will have to incorporate every Kenyan and all their biometrics and other data, including satellite tracking. Meanwhile, the NTSA is working on its own new generation driving license, and the Immigration Department is working on its own national ID system. Time now for a break. Daybreak will be back to discuss a lot more, including the fact that MPs are pushing for the removal of two cabinet secretaries for their role in the sugar importation scandal. But before we go to